Hi, I'm Emily.
And I'm Mary.
Welcome to Chatterbox Box, an F1 podcast.
Box.
Welcome back to another episode of Chatterbox Box, where Emily and I chat and giggle about all things F1. This week for the Chinese Grand Prix has been a huge struggle because the majority of the races were at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we're here, we're surviving.
Yeah, I definitely felt a little disconnected from the race weekend activities this week because everything was just at such a weird time. And it was just at a little bit too weird of a time that I truly could not afford to mess up my sleep schedule that much. So I don't know. This is my first time watching any of the F1 stuff not live, and it's just not the same. It's really not the same without being able to follow along live with your friends on Discord or live text your friend during it or watch it with someone.
No, I totally get it though, because I woke up, I set an alarm at 2 o'clock in the morning because I know I'm a snoozer, and I definitely snoozed. I didn't even snooze the alarm. I was just turning it off completely.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 2:50, 10 minutes before the race, I jolted awake and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's time. And in my head, all I could hear was dun, dun, dun. And I was like, if anyone has to do it, I have to be the one to do it. So I did
It's
it
so
for
cool.
Formula One.
Yeah, I did watch the sprint live because that was at 11 our time. I'm usually awake at that time, so that was chill. Didn't watch quali live because that was at 3 a.m. And then for the race, I was very determined. I was like, I'm going to watch this live. I had this whole great strategic plan. I was like, this is what I'll do. I'll go out so that I'm already out and about, and the bars here close at 2. So I was like, okay, if I leave, by the time I get home, it'll be 2:30, and then the race will be coming on and I'll just have a snack. It didn't work out that way because I left at midnight. So I got home at a reasonable time and I was like, no, I'm going to stay up. I didn't stay up. I fell asleep. So I just watched it in my bed on my iPad when I woke up this morning, and I kind of just zoned out for a lot of the actual race.
Absolutely. Yeah, I felt the same way. I really missed you. I know you texted me at midnight-ish, and I was asleep, and then I woke up and I was like, I'm awake, but in parentheses, but barely. So, yeah, it is a struggle. But yeah, I don't think that there was really any recent news that we had in the world of Formula One.
No, it was kind of a quiet past 2 weeks. I feel like we talked a lot about news last week and our filler episode, and then not much has really happened since then. And the race and the sprint gave us plenty of content, so don't worry.
So much content, and I'm super excited for the next race, not this upcoming week, but the following week, because it will be in our relative time zone, and we can take it easy and not have to set an alarm to wake up at an odd hour.
Yes, I'm so excited because I think it's at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. It's in the middle of the day. And I'm definitely going to order some food that you would have in Miami, maybe some tacos. It's going to be on Cinco de Mayo, so I'm definitely going to make some margaritas.
Okay,
I don't know.
I love that. You need to send me your margarita recipe, though, because I'm
Yeah.
excited for it. Also, I did order the Almave non-alcoholic
Oh.
tequila,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
we're gonna have to, play around with that.
Yeah, supporting Lewis Hamilton. We love that for this podcast. I can't wait to hear how it was. We do have some Chatterbox Box news. While there was not a lot of news in the Formula One world, we do have some news in the Chatterbox Box world. If you follow us on social media, you know that Mary was going to dye her hair to represent the F1 teams. You may also tell that I also dyed my hair, but not anything Formula One related, but I do look like an emo queen. So
We're here for it.
Mary, please tell us the results of your hair because you were contemplating like which team should I dye it for? Should I do steak neon green? Should I do Ferrari red? You polled people on our socials and we need to know the results.
Yes. So, as a Libra, I am so indecisive, honestly. Like, I was between Ferrari red, I was in between like that, like Patronus teal for Mercedes, the steak Sauber neon green I've had in the past before, and I missed it. But in case you are not watching on our YouTube channel, I just went with rainbow colors, trying to pull these pieces here, but essentially it goes from like this is technically not red. I think it's more like Alpine pink, and then it jumps into McLaren orange, and then I would call this yellow piece the Ferrari McDonald's, the Ferrari McDonald's yellow, and then we have the Sauber. Oh, the Sauber green. I am trying really hard. I am waiting for some additional photos. So I will share that when I get it. And then there is a little bit of teal and a little bit of like a blue. So I think I
Nice.
have
She
some
said,
choice.
I'm going to represent all the teams except for Red Bull.
Except for Red Bull. And let's just be honest, against my darker hair, I don't think I could pull. Like it wouldn't really matter. So it's fine. I'm here to
This,
represent nine teams.
yeah, and that's pretty much our daily lifestyle anyway, so glad it's represented in your hair.
Absolutely. Yeah. Overall, it was a fun time. Really here for it. And I love doing fun colors. But if next time you guys are like, Mary, like, what are you doing? I just want a true representation of the teams
Ooh.
that you rep. Maybe I will do Ferrari red. And okay.
Pink camo.
You know what? The raccoon hair, like the stripes in your hair, is so back. Maybe we could do like a little camo situation.
I'm just saying.
I mean, if Alpine's not going to do it, someone has to do it.
Yeah. Some other Chatterbox Box news. We are beginning to scheme a Chatterbox Box reunion. However, we have to think of how we would do our podcast in real life because we're so used to our setup of like the virtual separate microphones, separate computers, separate videos. So we'd have to do some research, but obviously if we get together, we want to do it on a race weekend. So that's maybe kind of in the works.
Yes. I'm so excited because I don't remember the last time me and Emily have seen each other. I think it was for an Ariana Grande concert. Has
Yeah,
it
it
been
was
that long?
pre-COVID for the Sweetener World
Ooh,
Tour.
that's like a decade
5
ago.
years. 5 years ago. It's been a long time. It's weird
It
because
really
we
has
live in
been.
the same state, but we don't really ever get to see each other because we are a 6-hour drive away, and it's just far enough that you can't really just do it for a weekend. But they just announced very, very cheap flights. So we're scheming. We're scheming everyone.
We're thinking about it. I think we need to because I want to taste Emily's perfect margarita. I
True.
mean, in the summer, like a summer Grand Prix. Oh. Okay, we're
True.
scheming. We are
We're
scheming.
scheming. Okay, back to the race. We got sidetracked talking about ourselves.
It's fine. We're just a little bit narcissistic.
Yeah, it's fine. So typically what we really, really love to talk about every single race is media day, the outfits, the press conference, all the tea there. Wasn't really keeping up with that this week, but one thing I will point out, Mary's gonna hang up. She's gonna leave the call. Lance Stroll's outfit,
Okay, bye.
but that outfit was so good. This great like color coordinated beige matching set. I don't know if it was leather or if it was just shiny. It was so good. I don't remember Lance having outfits this good last season. And every single week, I am impressed at his outfit. Like, more impressed than I am with Lewis, because with Lewis, I just expect a good outfit. I just
Yes.
wasn't expecting that from Lance.
He has found his formula, not within Formula One at the moment, but his fashion formula, which is very monochromatic. We did poll our Threads community, the F1 community on Threads, and I think the majority of people said that it was leather. And if it's leather, which I think it is, that's kind of hot.
I was impressed because he has been doing monochromes all season, but it's always been dark monochrome. We haven't seen him in a light monochrome yet. I didn't know he had it in him, and I really enjoyed it. I would like to see it more close up because nobody knows what the fabric was, and we need to know. We are going to have more commentary about Lance as we get into the race. Don't worry. But first, let's talk about free practice and the sprint quali because wow.
Yes. Practice was interesting. I don't usually pay it any mind because there's not really a good way to compare the drivers and the cars, and they're all out there doing their own thing and their own strategy to figure out the best way to do their best during the actual race. But there was a fire, I think, at turn 7 in free practice, and I was so confused. It started off teeny tiny, and then it just spread, and we were not sure what was happening. I texted Emily, and I was like, "There's a fire? Question mark, question mark, question mark." And, yeah, it was just so confusing, and then in the sprint quali, there was yet another fire in the same exact location, and I was so confused. I think at the end of it, what they determined was that they added a bunch of chemicals to take care of the grass. Maybe they over fertilized it or something, but the chemical burn turned into a chemical fire. And
Wow.
yeah. Luckily, none of the drivers were harmed. I think when the fires happened, the drivers were actually like far away enough, and they were just driving past, so it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I did hear a radio of Charles being like, "There's a fire."
Luckily, it's not our car, but
Yeah, just like so weird, so random and unexpected. When you were sending me pictures, I was like, "Whoa, okay."
yeah,
What is that?
the drivers were cooking. Like, they were cooking
Mm-hmm.
and steaming, and you know what? I never usually focus too much on practice, but they cooked and I ate it up.
Yeah, something I thought that was interesting this weekend is the decision to have this be a sprint weekend because they haven't raced in China in 5 years. Coincidentally, at the same time since we last saw each other.
True. Did not compute.
Since they haven't raced there in 5 years, I thought it was interesting that they decided to make this a sprint weekend because I feel like they would have really appreciated the extra practice time for the drivers that have never drove there before. And really, all of them haven't been there since 2019.
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned, and I think a couple of drivers shared this concern as well, particularly Carlos. He was like, "We haven't been here in forever. Like, why start the sprints in China?" And I also am quite a cautious person, so I also was confused. But when the sprint quali actually happened, it did seem like everyone was racing, and they took
Mhm.
it quite seriously. I think this sprint quali was probably the most interesting type of race I've ever seen because of the results. But yeah, it was a very interesting decision. I hope that they didn't feel too much pressure to overcompensate for the first sprint. And just because, I don't know, I expected a lot of chaos,
Mhm.
maybe less fire, like more more like driver to driver, car to car chaos. But
Yeah. What do you feel like was your biggest takeaway or like wow moment from the sprint quali and the sprint?
oh my gosh, Lewis, number 2 in the quali and the actual sprint?
Yeah.
I oh my god. it fed my delusion. I was like, "Oh my god, Lewis, you can do it." I think at one point he was number 1,
Yeah.
and I was really rooting for him. I mean, Lando got number 1, and I was fine with that, but, like, Lewis, I think he really needed something to continue to push and motivate himself as this is his last year at Mercedes, and just knowing how frustrated he's been with the W15 this season. I don't know, like, I really wanted him to get that win.
Yeah, I think I got so bitter at Max eventually passing Lewis and getting first that I didn't even like celebrate the fact that Lewis was on the podium. I was like, that's great. He's back. He's on podiums. Okay. But I was just like so mad because I really deluded myself into thinking that he could maintain the first place.
For sure.
I think having the results that we had in Australia so early on in the season really fed my delulu. And I led myself to believe that Red Bull wasn't going to have a dominant season. And Tokyo and Shanghai are really turning my brain around to like reframe what I've been thinking because I was expecting more variety in the first place. And I'm having to readjust my expectations to like, okay, it's going to be another max first place every single race unless there's a DNF. And that was a hard realization for me. And I think it soured the Lewis second place. But now reflecting 2 days later, I'm like, okay, that's great. He was in second place. Okay.
Yes, yes. I think the majority of us, if we are not true Max and or Red Bull fans, we
Mm.
are all watching like F1.5, which is basically just everyone 2 to 20 in the
Yeah.
race positions.
I wonder if he's bored. Like, I wonder if he's even enjoying it because he's so far ahead and so out of league of everyone. And I feel that maybe I think Checo's a good driver, but it's like he's not on par with Max. So
Mhm.
if he had a teammate that was a little bit more competitive and actually racing him, would he feel like he has to be bored, right? He seems like a really competitive person. He's like doing sim racing all the time in his spare time. So I would imagine he wants a little bit more of a fight, but he's just like 10 seconds ahead at all times.
Yeah, it is so strange to me, and I don't remember which one of the broadcasters said it, but when Max pitted during the actual race that we just watched, he like the broadcaster had said something about how now he's racing against the Ferraris, which he never typically sees, and he typically doesn't really overtake because he's so
Mhm.
far ahead. And I was like, wow, that is actually a really good point. He
Mhm.
doesn't often get to outlap other like other drivers.
Yeah, it's very interesting and he just overtakes people with such ease. There's no defense, there's no struggle. He just slides right on past and then you just watch the time gap go up and up and up and up and up and I'm like I'm bored. So he has to be bored.
Yes. Maybe he's just using it for practice. He's like competing with himself.
And he's like, this is practice for my true love sim racing. Like, do you think he's actually competing with people in sim racing?
I don't know.
What was that movie we watched? Gran Turismo. They should do something like
Yes.
that and like pull up someone that Max races against in sim racing and actually competes with. Like, just pull them up into Formula One, put him in the other Red Bull for like a little test run and see what happens.
Oh my gosh, yes. But also, if there are any Max fans that actually watch his sim racing or participate, please let us know because I'm not
Yeah.
gonna go out of my way to watch it.
No, so I would love to know like, is he actually competing in sim racing or is he also 20 seconds ahead of all the competition? Because I need more insight into this man's life.
Yes, I'm the same
um,
way.
yeah. So my biggest takeaway from the sprint quali and the sprint was the Ferrari on Ferrari crime. The boys are fighting. They
Why?
touched a little bit. They like kissed a little bit. Their cars. I saw so many funny memes that were like, "Are they in love?"
They might be a
So
little bit in love.
I think they're definitely colleagues. Like I don't think they're hanging out outside of work. They were mad, like big mad. Carlos is definitely driving aggressively this weekend. I noticed it a lot in the actual race as well. But why wouldn't he?
He doesn't have a like, he literally does not have a drive for
Yeah,
next year.
literally. What are they going to do? Fire him? Because he has no incentive. I think he is overall a good team player and will go along with the team orders, but he has no incentive to make sure that Charles has a better race than him because he's out the door. So he's going to be competitive. I don't think he really cares if he touches Charles' car. Like, why would he? He's not staying on the team. I know that Charles was pretty mad. I heard him on the radio and he was like cursing, like he was mad. And I thought the funniest thing, I screenshotted this because I thought it was unlike Ferrari because Ferrari's PR is usually ironclad. I feel they have to be so careful of what they say, they meaning the drivers at all times. They're always very neutral about everything. But they interviewed after the sprint and they were talking to Charles and Carlos, two different interviews. And they asked Charles, how did everything go with the sprint? How's the team doing? What's the vibe? Whatever. And he said, yes, it is all done and it is all good. No problems. I'm not going to disclose all the details of our discussions because it is always private discussions and it should remain private. But the discussions went well and we are all fine. So basically, like, yeah, we talked, like everything's sorted. They go talk to Carlos literally, like, probably within 5 minutes. And he says, the reality is that we didn't manage to talk because obviously with this format, it's not like you get time to talk with each other much. We will probably talk tonight. And I'm like, I just know Ferrari PR was like, oh my gosh, we should have briefed them on what to say because Charlotte's out here like, yeah, we talked, it's good. And Carlos is like, yeah, we haven't had a chance to talk yet, but I'm sure we'll talk tonight. Like, it's totally
Okay. The devil's advocate in me is like, what if the PR team did talk to both of them? And
fine.
Charles being like the goody two shoes he is, like he's staying at Ferrari. He's like, "Oh yeah, we talked. Like all is good. It's fine. We're friends." And then Carlos, on the other hand, is like, "Fuck this shit. No, we did not talk yet." And he's
I
just like putting a little fire under everyone's butt.
I could believe that. I'll insert the picture in editing, but his face in the interview was like very much like an IDGAF face. So I would not be surprised if he was just trying to stir the pot because usually they are so in sync, say exactly what you know Ferrari was like feeding them to say. And I was like, oh, this is drama. The boys are fighting.
It's fine. It's fine. I Here at the podcast, we are 164455 girlies. So we just want the best for our Charlos, little bromance. It's fine. They're going to be separated in less than a year, so I want them to come out of this on amicable terms.
Did you know it's actually like pretty rare to like Charles and Carlos equally because people are really divided. I genuinely like them both equally. I want them both to succeed equally. I don't think they're friends by any means. I don't think that there is a bromance at all. I think that they're very friendly when they have to be at work and they will participate in the little fun videos to feed the fans, but I think they may not even have each other's phone numbers saved.
They're in the group chat, but they're not texting each other on the
They're
side.
like, whose number is this in this group chat? Oh, that's Charles. Oh. But I like them both. Like, I love them both. I think there is like a general consensus in the fandom, though, that you either like Carlos or you like Charles. But I like them both. So,
I don't know. I like them both. I don't know if I'll say I like them both equally because Charles is the driver that got me into Formula One. So I weigh that just a little bit more heavily. But I'm not going to choose sides. I
mhm.
just want them to come out of this. You know, if they have to compromise, they'll compromise. But I want them
Mhm.
both to be relatively happy with the outcome of it.
Yeah, I genuinely do like them both equally personally. But I also want Charles and Ferrari to be so for real because Carlos doesn't owe you anything. Like he's not
No.
going to just like be nice to you, like let you pass, like not fight with you just because you're on the same team because you are basically not on the same team.
You know who I want to fight with though?
Who?
I have beef with the Williams team because
Mm.
at the start of the race, why did poor Logan have to start in the pit lane? I looked into this a little bit. So, because they started to experiment with the setup of their car, they got a little bit of a penalty, and that caused Logan to start in the pit lane at the start of the race. And I am extremely upset to hear that because they changed the front wing and the nose of the car, and I think a little bit of the suspension too, which makes it against the parkway conditions. Like they broke those conditions. And that hurts my heart because at this point, I'm starting to feel like it's intentional that they are ruining Logan's race. I know he's not the best driver. I'm not out here saying he is the best driver, but the fact that they are out here basically sabotaging him just hurts. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you don't want to have faith in Logan as a driver, if you don't want to nurture his development, if you don't respect him as a driver, if you don't truly believe that he can get better and he can grow, let him go and promote someone else up. Because it's just getting ridiculous at this point. It feels so unfair. Nobody's out here saying that Logan Sargent is a good driver, but either put in the development, the resources, the time, the effort, the hope, the belief to help him grow and become a better driver or let him go. Because, like, what is this? What is happening?
Yes, and it's like race after race after race. Ever since Alex like damaged his chassis, it's been one thing after the next for poor Logie Bear, and am not happy about this. I'm very upset
Mhm.
about this because I don't know. I At this point you have to make a decision. Either you're committed to this contract or you're not. But don't play with his feelings and don't play with his car like that.
Yeah, I think honestly at this point, I'm like, just send Logan to IndyCar. Let him go develop as a driver elsewhere because I think not only is his tenure tainted and soured at Williams, all of the other teams don't respect him now either. So I feel like his chance of getting a seat elsewhere is very slim because people are thinking that his own team doesn't even support him. So why would they bring him on? And I think I would just love to see him in IndyCar thriving. Side note, I think we should get into IndyCar because I saw all of our friends on the internet at the Long Beach GP this weekend, and it looked so fun. And the races are more accessible and more affordable. So I think we should consider getting into IndyCar, and that could maybe help us on our off weeks when there's no F1. Anyone listening, please comment below and tell us if you're also into IndyCar and if you would like us to get into IndyCar. But very sidetracked here. Back to Logan. Justice for Logan.
I understand that they don't really have time to practice and they want to figure out the best kind of outcome for the Miami GP. But at this point, there is no respect to Logan's name. I think the only maybe true Formula One driver friend that he has is Oscar because you always see Logan and Oscar together. But other than that, no one is out here hanging out with Logie. And
Mhm.
I hate it. I hate it here.
It was
No.
a meme to like Logan last year. And now we're like literally ride or die for Logan, like defending him to no end because I just feel like he's been treated really unfairly.
Yes, I will fight for him. Literally. Just I need help with the plane tickets, but like you give me the plane ticket and I will be there and I will
Hmm.
throw a punch for
Hmm.
you, Logan, because I can get in trouble. You can't.
Period. I wish for him to do better, and I really want to see him in the points this season. But if they're not going to help him to get better, I really want to see him let go.
Yes, to all of that. Anyways, other related race news. We had 2 safety cars back to back, and they were both kind of exciting for different reasons. Valtteri
Mhm.
Bottas, his engine just kind of crapped out on him, and that was very unfortunate, but can we talk about the little, like, scooter moment as he went back to the pit lane or, like,
Honestly,
wherever he is?
first, that whole thing that happened with his car was so wild to me because he just got out of his car and the cars were still racing behind him. I was like, aren't you supposed to stay in the car? I know that he had gone off into like the runoff area, so maybe it was fine. But I remember when George had that crash a little bit ago and he's like, please call a red flag, like terrified because everyone was saying he's not supposed to get out of the car because he's in the middle of the race. So I don't know if Valtteri was allowed to get out of the car because he was off in that runoff area, but it was very surprising to me. It sounded very surprising to the commentators too. When I was watching on F1 TV, they were like, whoa, he's out of the car. Like, this should be a red flag. This should definitely be a safety car. What is going on? He's just like out. Like, there's racing behind him. So I don't think he was supposed to get out of the car, but I think he was over it. He was like, let me get on my scooter. I'm out of here. Bye.
Yeah, I was very confused about that. I think he was far away, and one thing that surprised me was that he was able to drive to the runoff area very casually, it seemed, and then I think the commentators were like, "There should be, like, a safety car right now." Yes, the yellow flag was there, but because he was getting out, they needed to do the safety car immediately, like, sooner than what they had done, and, yeah, I was like, "Valtteri, are you good? Please stay safe."
No, honestly, these drivers are so calm under chaos. That's not the first time I've seen someone have like an engine issue or some sort of car issue where they just calmly drive it off the track and they're just like, "Hmm." If I was driving 200 miles per hour and my engine went out, I would be having a meltdown. I would be crying. Imagine you're like on the highway and your car just craps out. I would not have the peace of mind to pull over into like the shoulder on the highway. I would just be panicking. But they're always just like, hey guys,
Yes.
by the way, the engine failed.
Yeah.
And they
I'm all
just like
good,
drive
though.
on over. And they're like, I'm good. And then they just get
Yes,
on the scooter and scoot away. Like,
I know. Just to pivot back a little bit, I don't remember if this was qualifying or sprint or practice. I think it was probably the sprint quali or something like that, where Carlos, like something happened to Carlos and he spun out. And then he was so in control of his car that he managed to reduce the damage to his car. So, like, rather than hitting it from the front or the back, he swerved and it like hit the side of his car. And I was like, that is so impressive. Like, if I spun out, I'd be like freaking out
mhm,
and I would probably cause the team like millions of hundreds of dollars
mhm.
in damages.
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah. 100%. And this is why you and I are not F1 drivers. This is
That's the
why,
only
like,
reason.
honestly, this is why I don't even feel comfortable being like, Logan sucks, he's not a good driver, or like anyone sucks and they're not a good driver because they're definitely better than me.
Yes, these are 20 of the top drivers. You can't all be number 1, and
Mhm.
that's fine, but you are probably a better driver than most drivers on the road.
Yeah, so I guess we can talk about the race. I was excited at the beginning because there was some like competition in the front, and we had Lando in first for a while, and that was really exciting. And we had some movement up there and stuff, and that was exciting. But once the safety cars were resolved, I was just like kind of bored, and I really zoned out for the rest of the race.
It was definitely so hard to continue watching the race. I ended up watching, I think, the majority of it until the last 10 laps because the outcome seemed quite predictable at that point. Like, Max was already getting pole position. There was, I think, some fighting in the front with Alonso, Norris, and everyone, but it was, like, fine. It kinda settled at that point, and it was predictable.
Alonso kind of carried this race for me. I was like, whoa, he was being bold in the beginning to like try to overtake Checo and successfully overtake Checo for quite a while. I was like, okay, Fernando. And then I think he fought throughout the rest of the race, like obviously a little bit farther back, but he came to play. And you want to know why? I think it's because he got that little shout out in the Taylor Swift song.
I think so because you know what they say, the Swifties, the love that they have for Taylor is so strong that whatever she writes or talks about, they're there. The Taylor Swift to Formula One crossover is there. It is
Mhm.
so easy to make that move, especially after that song.
Yeah, honestly, you can't tell me that that little reference she made in the song, for those of you who haven't heard it yet, one of her songs, she mentions an Aston Martin car. And you cannot tell me that that isn't a direct reference to the rumors that she was dating Fernando. She could have mentioned any luxury car. And to have to have said an Aston Martin, there's no way she doesn't know about those rumors because her boyfriend is an investor in Alpine. I also don't think that any headline goes out about Taylor Swift without her having knowledge of it. So I'm positive she knew about that and she just threw that in there as like a little LOL. But I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's just a coincidence. But I don't believe that the word coincidence can coexist with Taylor Swift. I think everything she does is very calculated and intentional.
Yes, I if it was any other artist, I would agree with them, but Taylor is extremely intentional with her play with words and her lyrics. And you know what? I am loving the content that Aston Martin is coming out with that song too. So it's almost as if it's a confirmation that things did happen.
Yeah, I don't think they actually dated, but I think that they're both well aware of the rumors.
Exactly.
I couldn't see them actually dating, but I think that, you
No.
know, she definitely knows the rumors were there.
Absolutely. The other very entertaining thing about Fernando is that he had a very different strategy compared to everyone else. I think when there was that safety car that happened, a lot of people pitted and they moved into the hard tires.
Mm.
But Nando over here was like, put me on the softs. Honestly, that was probably the most entertaining thing that I saw. I also wanted to give kudos to Lewis because coming from 18th on the starting grid and moving up to ninth to get points for Mercedes,
Hmm.
and he did it so I don't wanna say he did it effortlessly, but he did it with a lot of precision and a lot of calculation. Like, he really worked hard to get to the points, and
Yeah.
honestly, kudos. Kudos to him, especially because the W15 is a piece of crap car, and even he
Mhm.
thinks so, and he thought so the entire race.
Why do you think that he is struggling so much more than George, though? Because George is like consistently, like not doing well, but like decently with the car.
I think it's both the car and the fact that it's so unpredictable. Like some
Mhm.
days, even during this Grand Prix, like the sprints, he was very consistently doing well. And then the next, he's not doing so well. I think
Mhm.
the way that the car is playing with the tires and the weather and like the actual track surface is giving Lewis a hard time, and he likes to be able to like read the environment and the situation to be able to better prepare. And I think that might just be his experience in Formula 1 and his experience with the rest of the cars, whereas George is I don't wanna say that he's, like, fresh, but he doesn't have as much data points to
Mhm.
compare with, so he might be a little bit more nimble and able to be flexible. And I mean, the other thing is probably mental, right? He knows he's not going to stick with Mercedes, and he has potentially a better car in the future for him.
Mhm.
So maybe he's like 80% there with Mercedes now, but like the other 20%, he's like looking into the future.
Yeah, I think it's possible they may be tailoring the car to George more because he is staying long term, so maybe that is going on as well.
Yeah, they might be experimenting more with Lewis's car to get a little bit more feedback, and I think Lewis is quite, like, intelligent and, like, responsible enough to talk through some of the issues with
Mhm.
that experiment as well, but I don't know, it hurts every time he gets on the radio. I'm like, "Oh, no, he's gonna have something negative to say about the car."
Yeah. He was simultaneously, like, over it, but also in a good mood this weekend. Like, every time he came on the radio, he was like, "The car sucks." But every time he did an interview, he was like, "I'm just gonna try to have fun." I was
"I'm
like,
still gonna smile, it's fine, I still like driving."
yeah, he's like, "I'm just happy to be here," and that I put my notice in already.
Exactly. I think his interviews remind me I don't watch other sports a lot, but this is a reference that gets mentioned a lot. I think it's, like, some football player, like, American football player, and he's like, "I'm just here so I don't get fined." Giving, like, the same energy.
Yeah, it's very much like when you're in your last 2 weeks at your job and people ask for your opinion on the project or something, and you're like, "It sucks, but I'm clocking out at 5, so I don't really care."
Exactly, exactly.
I want to talk about Lando because I feel like Lando did really well in the race. I was proud of him. He held on to first for a really long time. And there was a moment with Lando that made me realize sometimes with this sport, I forget that it's a team sport because there's so much focus on the driver. But he had this really great pit stop moment that was like seamless by McLaren. I think it was maybe the fastest of the race. I don't know. But it was at a moment where he really needed to have a good pit stop and it was just like flawless, like no errors, just like bing bang boom. And it really highlighted for me how much effort from the team and the engineers goes into making sure that the driver has a good race because it was directly contrasted to this awful pit stop that Pierre had that was just like horrific. And at first, the commentators on F1 TV were not talking about it. And I was like, what is going on? Because you just saw like Pierre like in the graphic thing, it was like Pierre in the pit. I want to say he was like 11th or 12th. Like he wasn't that low. And you just watch his name like drop, 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 drop until he's in 20th and he's still in the pit. And I was like, what is going on? And they weren't talking about it. They weren't panning the camera to it, but you could just see it happening. And I was like, hello, can I get an update? Finally, like 10 minutes later, they showed what happened. And it seemed like they were borrowing from Steak or something because they dropped the car off the jack and there was only three tires on it and some of them weren't on fully. I saw one of the engineers fall over. I was like, what is happening? And I think that Pierre could have been so pissed and he could have went on the radio and been like, what the fuck? But he went on the radio and was like, is everyone okay? So I was surprised from him to see him being considerate like that. But I think seeing those two pit stops so close together really highlighted for me that McLaren is doing so well, not just because of Oscar and Lando, but because the team is like putting in the work.
I agree, and kudos to Pierre because I probably would have been like, "Oh my god, guys, but are
Mm-hmm.
you okay?" But his immediate reaction was, "Is everyone okay?" And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, those tires look heavy AF. You don't think about that because whenever you see a seamless pit stop like McLaren's, it seems so lightweight, but it probably I don't know how much it weighs, but it probably weighs a crap ton,
Right.
and they make it look so easy. So it was really nice of Pierre to just check on everyone, make sure that everyone is okay because
Mm-hmm.
that could have very easily sprained a foot or an ankle depending on how it like fell back.
Mm-hmm.
But Yes, Lando's pit stop was awesome. I also wanted to give my roses and flowers to Charles. I think he had a pretty decent strategy on the mediums before the first safety car that happened, mostly because he was managing his tires so well. And
Mhm.
even the pit stop for the safety car, it was pretty effortless as well. Unfortunately, that car didn't do well with the hards, but
Mhm.
you know what? They all tried.
Yeah, I didn't find myself really paying attention to Charles this race. I don't know why. I was just like, okay, cool.
I guess there was not only one safety car, immediately after, there was a second safety car. I not like
Mhm.
immediate, but like as soon as the safety car was lifted and the race was ready to get back on track, there was another safety car or like a yellow flag for the Lance and Daniel situation. Do you want to talk about
Right.
that?
I definitely think Lance was in the wrong. From the videos, it's pretty clear, like pretty obvious. He literally just drove into Danny. It was pretty dumb. And then Danny's race was over.
It was such a strange thing. I think one, I agree with you. It seems like Lance very much was in the wrong because not only did Lance hit Danny from the back, he, like, lifted the entire car almost, and I think Daniel just kept driving and was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, yeah, everything's fine," until I think, like, maybe a minute or 2 after, he was like, "Yeah, no, the floor is fucked," and then
Mhm.
that was the end of Daniel's race. I think Lance pitted pretty immediately because of the damage on his car, but I understand that, like, when you're in the moment of driving, you can't really think through what exactly happened, but it was very clear that everyone was trying to maybe gain some momentum after the safety car. So it's not going to be a full acceleration. There's going to be some stopping, a little bit of maneuvering to warm up the tires. And I think Lance could have paid a little bit more attention, given Daniel a little bit more room in the front, but I get it. It's could have just been, like, someone all the way at the front broke a little bit too aggressively, and maybe there was some situation up there, and then it just had this domino effect,
Mhm.
but, yeah, I don't think it was, like, that vague. Lance, I think, did get a 10-second penalty for that, and he was pretty pissed off.
Yeah, I think Lance kind of tried to just rule it off as almost like a racing incident, or he thought Daniel was brake checking him or something. Lance definitely took no accountability for this. Even in his interview, he was just like, oh, yeah, I don't know, whatever. Okay, Lance, maybe be like, I was wrong. But one thing I will say is thank you to Lance because this is all anyone is talking about. And I think if that whole thing didn't happen, no one would really have anything to talk about because it was a pretty boring race. This is like my whole For You page, our whole threads homepage. Every time I open Instagram, that's all anyone's talking about today. Daniel was pissed. He was mad. They interviewed him after, and people were saying, like, Lance thinks it's your fault or whatever. And he was like, okay, well, now I'm pissed. Okay, Daniel.
Hey,
Okay.
Danny.
You know how we always say Ferrari has such severe PR training? Like V Carb should maybe increase theirs because I think Daniel had genuinely like every right to be pissed and it was completely valid, but he just reacted like so childishly to the he's now I'm pissed. It almost felt like he was like stomping. And I was like, okay, Daniel. And then he said, I saw a quote. I didn't see the actual interview, so I don't know where this quote is coming from, but apparently Daniel said about Lance, money is surely his only talent.
What?
I know. I was like, ooh, the boys are fighting part two. Like the theme of this episode is that the boys are fighting. We have Ferrari on Ferrari crime, and we got the two brunette boys fighting. So what's going on? The only other thing that I will say about Daniel is I do feel like he can be a little petty in his post race interviews, he said some petty comments about Yuki. I feel like it was like calling Yuki childish. And I think we didn't look too much into it at the moment because Yuki was being kind of childish. So we were like, yeah, that's valid. Okay, whatever. But now he's like, your only talent is money. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. Okay, I think Daniel is trying to like just really speak his mind. But there's just been a few times this season that it feels like Daniel is just being a little bit too off the cuff with his interviews. I'm also thinking about his response to the whole Christian Horner situation. And I'm just wondering if Daniel maybe needs to take a PR class.
I'm curious if he's getting extremely affected by his performance and
Mhm.
kind of the pressure that is getting added on to his drive
Mhm.
because he's not performing as well as anyone would expect. So the fact that maybe everyone else is like, you need to perform well, that adds pressure. And then he's just taking it out however he can take it out. So it might not be because of Yuki specifically or Lance specifically, but it's just building up and causing this much distress for him.
That's probably what is going on. And I'm not trying to sound like I think Daniel's in the wrong here because I think Lance is in the wrong here. But I wonder if Daniel would have been as upset at his chance to finish the race potentially in the points if he had been doing well the rest of the season, because I think that the pressure's on him and he really needs to be doing well in these races to keep his seat. So losing the chance to finish the race probably means a lot more than, I don't know, Max not being able to finish a race because he's just not doing that great this season. So it's like, oh, I really needed to finish this race. And it's a track he's familiar with. He's won in Shanghai before. So I think he was hoping to have a much better weekend and be able to prove himself. And I'm sure it is very frustrating to have your drive end because of someone else's mistake. So that's completely valid. I'm just surprised by how open he's allowed to be in these interviews.
Yeah, it is really strange, and I do feel very badly for him because I know for this Grand Prix, it felt like Yuki and Daniel's positions swapped a little bit, where Yuki's been pretty consistently in the points and doing fairly well. And
Mhm.
this was the race that Daniel was doing fairly well in. I think he was in the position of getting V carb some points. And then after that happened, it just couldn't go through. Cause I remember reaching out to a friend and I was like, when did Daniel, when did he get ninth?
Mhm.
And so I think he was so positive and optimistic that he was going to be able to perform better than he did. And the
Mhm.
fact that his performance was affected by another driver, I think was frustrating for him. Although this time he has someone to blame. And it's like, well, I was doing well
Mhm.
until Lancey Boy here with all of his money slammed into me.
Okay, like the dig at Lance's money though, like you're all billionaires. Maybe
You're
not
all
billionaires,
rich.
but they're all at least millionaires.
Mhm.
Like you're all rich.
Right.
Most of you got into this sport because you have rich family. There's a very few handful of drivers that came in from humble beginnings, and I'm pretty sure Daniel Ricciardo is not one of them. So
It's very confusing.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
It's he was just mad.
He was madman. But I don't really have any other takeaways from this race weekend. I know you have a few more takes. So what else do you have?
The number of penalties during this race, I knew that
Mhm.
it was going to be somewhat chaotic, but just based on like how competitive everyone was, there were a handful of penalties given to drivers because they overtook during the safety cars.
Mhm.
Logan, who passed Hulkenberg under the safety car, received a 10-second penalty, which he started at the back of the grid. And on top of that, I was hurt because I think at one point Logan was 12th and I was rooting for him to try and get into the points, but that penalty, I think, on top of other things, really affected him. There was also Daniel, also overtaking Hulkenberg under the safety car. And Daniel deliberately did it, he said, because Hulkenberg also overtook him during the safety car. This penalty, though, felt a little bit harsh for me. Instead of having a 10-second penalty during the race or anything like that, he is getting a 3-place grid penalty in Miami, and I'm unsure if that makes a lot of sense. I'm curious what your thoughts are, but I also wanted to touch on the other 2 penalties. Lance got a 10-second penalty for that concertina effect with Daniel, like the little nudge, and then Kevin Magnussen collided with Yugi, and I think that was like another 10-second penalty. I don't remember at the top of my head. But yeah, there was a lot of competition this race, a lot of tension in the air, but curious about what your thoughts are on that 3-place grid penalty for Daniel in the upcoming race.
I think maybe during one of the off weeks, I need to research and look more into what action causes which penalty, because it always feels very confusing to me. Like, why does this get this punishment, but that gets that punishment? It never feels like a clear explanation. So I would love to know if they have a guidebook. Because sometimes it feels like they're just willy-nilly, like, okay, let's take away 3 points from him. Let's take away 15 seconds from him.
What was really surprising for me, though, is that like Daniel saying that Hulkenberg also overtook him during the safety car, but I don't think Hulkenberg actually got a penalty. I might be wrong. Like I was delirious during the race, so I might not have taken that into account, but I believe there were 4 like total penalties that were big and major. But yeah, it was a little odd for me.
I think we talked a lot more about this race than I expected us to, because we both said it was boring. And here we are yapping away. But I don't think we have much else to say. So thank you all for listening.
If you have any thoughts on this race that we didn't quite cover, or if you just have a little bit more context to this, please feel free to reach out in the comments on our YouTube channel or our social media accounts, Chatterboxbox on TikTok or Chatterboxboxf on Instagram and Threads. Next week, there's not going to be a race, so we are going to talk about the last and final book in the Dirty Air series called Redeemed.
Can't wait to talk about the book with everyone. Can't wait to wrap up our Dirty Air series book club segment and move on to other books. Excited to give this one a reread, though. I think it will be the best of the rereads. Mary has already read it and forewarned me that it is the best of the rereads. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And then we'll also be back for Miami the first weekend of May.
Yay! All right. Well, it was so good talking to you guys and so good talking to you, Emily. That is all from me. Over and out.
Bye!
Bye, F1 world.
No, not yet, not yet.
Oh no, I'm saying like bye for today.